Good morning. In the first of our best practices series, we are going to talk about a successful site inspection. Site inspections are so important to the successful outcome of a meeting, convention, or a trade show. For the planners in the room, it's important to, in advance, think about what it is that makes your event unique and how are you going to convey that to the folks that you're about to take a tour with. For the suppliers and the vendors in the room, what information do you need to convey to a planner that they might not think about it? What information do they need to glean during their site visit? How do you cut through all the marketing hype and choose the right venue for you? This is our group of experts that are going to help us walk through that. Please let me first introduce to my immediate left, Bob Schuler, Vice President of the Atlanta Convention Center at America's Mart.
That's because you used to work for the Atlanta Market Center.
Sorry, yeah, I did. And next we have Ron Olejko, who is Senior Director of Meetings and Conferences for the American College of Rheumatology. We have Frank McCrary, who is Sales Manager for Global Experience Services, GES. And Mr. Mark Sussman, who is Director of Trade Show Sales for the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau. Before we start with the questions, I'd like each of them to spend about a minute telling us about their, how they got to where they are, what aspects have they been both a planner and a supplier in the industry, and just tell us a little bit about it so you'll understand the frame of reference for their responses.
We're going to give up our minutes for Bob.
Okay. Somebody watch the clock. Go.
That's an inside joke, by the way. Okay, so I came to Georgia straight from New Hampshire. I'm a UNH Wildcat. Anybody here from UNH? New Hampshire. Okay, well, he's from New Hampshire, too. New Hampshire College,
New
right?
Hampshire College.
Do you even know where that is? Spent 15 years with Marriott International Hotels and Resorts, all here in Atlanta. And switched over to the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau, spent 10 years there. Running the sales and services side, and I've been here on site doing multiple things, but primarily launching a convention center concept within this facility. This is one of the largest trade show facilities in the country with 7 million total square feet, and I'm going on almost my 5th year here. So,
Ron?
Was that a minute?
That's a minute. Ron?
I've been in this industry about 40 years, started as a temp after college in New York for a company called Tour Gals. I was a temp and I had to announce I'm your Tour Gal representative, which always caused a snicker. It led to a job at the Arthritis Foundation where I started working on meetings. I was always a meeting planner, I just didn't really know it. And eventually moved to Atlanta with the Arthritis Foundation, where my group that I work with now, the ACR, was a part of. Have always been on the buyer's side, the meeting planner side. We used to be self-contained in hotels. Started the first exhibit program and poster program as a medical group, and I had 7, or maybe it was 8 tabletops in a foyer of a ballroom and 10 posters, and now I have 1,000 posters a day. That repeats 3 times, and I have a 300,000 square foot exhibit hall, and that's my meeting. Our meeting's about 15,500 people, and so we are citywide and use convention centers and 50 or so hotels.
Thank you, Sue. I'm a native of Birmingham, Alabama, where attended Auburn University in the 1970s. There you go, War Eagle, yeah. In the 1970s, I was fortunate enough to get a job working in the mining industry in Alabama, which has helped me immensely in the last 15 years with equipment, because I knew a lot about heavy equipment movement. In the 1980s, I let my family convince me to come over here and go into the boat business. We had a boat dealership for 10 years. And from there in 1990, I went to work for Simcoe Productions and helped manage the Atlanta Boat Show and the Atlanta Home Show. And in 1998, came to work for GES and started in operations, and I've been very fortunate to stay with them almost 20 years now and be in the sales department.
I'm currently with the Atlanta Convention and Visitors Bureau as Director of Trade Show Sales. I have a long history with Marriott, 21 years, so I come from the hotel side. Mostly in the convention hotels cross-country, did 3 cross-country moves with Marriott. Also worked at the Omni CNN Center. I'm the other part of New Hampshire, but on the New Hampshire College, which is now Southern New Hampshire University, also known as the Penmen. And no, we do not have a football team. Penman, go figure. So anyway, got a hospitality degree there, been in this industry for quite a while, love what I'm doing, big picture, love Atlanta, love what this city has to offer, and work with some great people like you all.
All right, question number 1. From a planner's perspective, what are some of the key objectives for a site inspection, and how should these objectives be prioritized? Ron, I'm going to let you.
Guess that's all you, Ron.
Well, I think it depends on the meeting. I'm assuming that we are all probably people who have exhibits and are not just doing meeting rooms. Meeting space for me is key. When I go and look at facilities, whether it's a hotel or a convention center, I mean, there are a lot of things that go into the factor, but the bottom line is if I can't have the meeting space that I need, I'm not coming to your facility. The other thing for me that's a real priority, and this is a challenge for me, I'll be honest, and that is the technology. We're a medical show, and even more so than meeting space now, technology, particularly Wi-Fi within meeting space, is becoming really crucial for me. I travel with my IT guy frequently now on site visits because he speaks a language that I don't. And in my experience, most salespeople, I could be wrong, but most salespeople don't speak that language either. But that is becoming truly, truly crucial. The other thing that, this is one of those little things that drives me nuts when I go on a site visit. And, like all of us, we probably do objectives and, here's our meeting, here's our attendance, here's what we're trying to achieve. You get all that history, you have all that background, and you go to a facility and the salesperson is taking you around and the meeting rooms are locked. It happens to me all the time, and I go, we'll call security. Well, that's fine, it's 5 or 10 minutes, but did you not know I was coming? Did I not tell you what I wanted to see? That happens all the time. But again, for like convention facilities, like say this building or the Congress Center, meeting space I'm fairly comfortable with, but what I really need to know is for me, the biggest thing is technology. In fact, we're actually in the process of hiring a technology consultant to travel with us, because that for me is so crucial nowadays.
Ron, you had mentioned space, and that's important to you, but from my perspective, a lot of planners, they may focus on a facility like this convention center here or the Georgia World Congress Center or our other facilities around, but then there are others that focus on surely the destination because that's going to drive attendance. Do you see that as well as a...
Well, it depends. I can only speak from a medical point of view. Some of you may or may not be familiar with what's going on over in Europe with medical guidelines. We certainly have these medical issues here in America. We're at the point now where we can't really advertise the fun stuff in cities anymore because the European pharma companies are not funding or don't want to fund a meeting because they go on their website and they have a compliance department. So if you, like for instance, this year I'm going to San Francisco, and if you say, look at all the fun stuff you can do this and this and this and this and this, they don't want to fund us. We've even had to change our opening reception to a networking hour because they don't want to fund anything that has the word reception in it. So for us, a destination is important, but it's not a selling point for us because we can't really do that very well. But it would be different for a different group.
Yeah, I think every show organizer is going to have a different perspective on that. I mean, for America's Mart shows, it's not about the destination because we own a building that we do our shows in. But for Light Fair, for example, the one show we host outside of Atlanta, it's really not about the appeal for the destination for that particular show. It's about keeping everybody on the show floor. And I think Ron made a point about meeting rooms and proximity of meeting rooms to meeting space and trade show floor. It's very important for that particular show because you don't want people off the show floor very long. So for Light Fair, it's important. For our own shows here in this campus, while we have a bulk of our meeting rooms here from the convention center perspective, we probably have 45 meeting rooms across the campus purposefully in and where the people are, so they don't have to go very far, travel very far from where their core business is.
All right, the next question is for anyone on the panel, but I'm going to pick on Frank first. Is it important to establish time parameters for a site inspection out of everyone's respect for time?
Am I answering that from a convention center perspective or a client?
You can be either.
So from a convention center, you want to take up as much time as you can. But the reality is, we're never alone on a site visit. No one ever comes to visit us and just us. So in fairness to all of our other partners, sometimes they're going to Cobb or the airport, the GICC, and here, and the Congress Center. And in fairness to everybody, and I know this is one of the biggest challenges the Bureau has, and frankly, probably they do a tremendous job keeping people on task with this, sometimes to the detriment of the center. But if a center doesn't understand the needs of that client, if you only have an hour and your typical tour takes 2, you better shrink it down to an hour and figure out what that customer needs from you. And it might be different from what they need in Cobb or what they need at the airport.
From a CVB perspective, and Bob's right, is you have to stay on task and be respectful. And based on what we learn and understand from our customers, as Ron mentioned earlier, the space is most important, and that's probably where we're going to spend a lot of our time. So in order to really pull it all together, and we work with a lot of our destination management companies here locally to help us through this, we actually do 2 site visit itineraries. One for the customer that has a timeline of when we need to be and how long we need to be there and who we're seeing, and we have everybody's contact information on there for them. We also do one what we call internal, and that goes to all of our stakeholders, all of our partners. And I like to call that run of show. And this is where we're asking the hotels, please have your general manager and other executive committee members greeting us at the door. The worst thing, Ron just mentioned it, doors locked. The worst thing is getting to a hotel and having to wait for the salesperson to show up to greet you at the door or wait for the general manager. We also say all the customer wants to do is see a hotel room, or if that hotel happens to be considered for a headquarter hotel, here's what they want to see as far as space, suites, etc. So that's how we kind of keep on task. Now, because we have everybody's contact information, at least we've established a basis of timeline that could very well change when the customer gets here and they want to spend more time in certain areas. Well, we can always call ahead, and we do that anyway as when we're going to be arriving. So the venues, whether it's an attraction or a hotel or convention center, they can be ready to greet the customer when we arrive.
Along that line, if there's myself and another colleague coming for a site inspection, it's one thing. But when I'm bringing an entire board of directors, a large group, what strategies do you use to keep the group either moving or dividing them up or whatever to stay on task? What's your thoughts? Frank, what do you do when you go to show a group?
From a show management standpoint, we always tried to have a schedule and, different time allotted for different things. And we also had specific goals for that site visit as to what we wanted to learn while we were there. In my position now, I'm more of I'm not the main player. I'm just a spoke on the wheel, and I have to think about what my needs are, say in a certain city, Nashville, or I'm going to do the World of Asphalt in Baltimore next week. We've got to plan our routes for our trucks to get in, because these trucks are all oversized, right, and it's a very, very specialized show. So I think everyone has their own objectives at the site visit, but it has to be run, as you guys say, on a timely basis, and think about the things that the group needs.
Ron, do you plan 2 different kinds of site inspections? Do you ever take your board with you and go?
No. We used to years ago when I first started, and people were making this. I actually once got a call from a venue in Houston saying that they had a contract for a place I hadn't seen, and one of our local doctors, his wife had signed it. And we kind of learned that lesson a long time ago. I'm very lucky in the sense that we run our association as a business, and they've hired staff, myself, to make decisions for them. So I'm basically empowered to make decisions. I mean, I do take some staff along, but in terms of what we're using, decisions, those decisions are literally made by me and possibly my big boss. We don't take the board because as they're physicians, they don't know what we do, just like I don't know what they do. I would encourage everybody. A lot of times you bring board members because it gives them something to do and it makes them enjoy a free weekend or whatever at a hotel. But really, I think you really have to look at it and say, is that really the best way? Because they really frequently don't know what
So I think
they need.
it's not often that for a site inspection that a board of directors would come in.
Yeah.
It's more that the board, if the city was selected already, that the board might host a meeting in that destination to just get a feel for that destination. But on the site selection, you might have a site selection committee. And they all have different responsibilities. Some responsible for the education, some responsible for the food and beverage, some responsible for the hotels. So if there's a large group, in the interest of time, what we'll recommend, and oftentimes I think the planner might recommend as well, is we have the resources to break those groups up. So the hotel people can focus on the hotels, the food and beverage people can focus on the venues, and other menu items, and then those who are responsible for education can focus on the meeting rooms and whether or not there are enough. Then bring those people back together so then they can collaborate on their findings and share.
Sure, that makes sense. All right, the next question is for our suppliers and vendors in the panel. What is the most common request made to you that you cannot fulfill?
I would probably say cheaper pricing. I've never run across anything that we couldn't do with enough planning, but the cost of it sometimes comes into question. A lot of people have grand ideas about things that they just don't realize what it's going to cost, to bring that together and to that.
I have to echo that. Free. We want it free.
Free.
And nothing is free. Somebody's got to pay something. And like Frank said, you find a way to overcome those challenges. We don't like to say we can't do anything. We like to figure out how can we get there. And sometimes you're going to be at an impasse, unfortunately.
Sure.
I would argue free isn't necessarily the word, but what I want is fair pricing. And I'll speak for this from a hotel point of view when I go work with hotels. I've served on some advisory boards and for the Marriott, and this has come up a lot. You go to a meeting that you've done before, several times before. You go to one hotel and they quote you, the Wi-Fi is going to be $20,000. You say no, and they bargain, and you end up paying $3,000. That's the kind of thing that drives me nuts. That happens in convention centers too. What that does for me, and this is really not so much a site visit, but a contractual thing, it makes me doubt your ethics and how well I can trust you as a salesperson. I mean, if you really want $15,000, you quote me $18,000, we bargain down $3,000, that's okay. But think about it if somebody quoted you a room rate of $300, let's say, and you ended up paying only $199 in the process. You would question what else that person is really, ripping you off. That's the part that drives me nuts. So, I like to get away from this idea of free. What I want is fair.
You bring up a good point. It's knowing your account and knowing your business. And so many times people sell from the top down. It's kind of like the old 80s, mentality where you start as high as you can go, or your rack rates, whatever you call them, and then you eventually get down. They call it negotiating, but really you need to know what your needs are first.
Yeah.
So just for your information, we don't charge for Wi-Fi here.
That doesn't necessarily mean, though, it's going to be serving our meeting adequately. But
we have great bandwidth.
Good pitch.
It is a credibility issue that some of our junior level salespeople get into that mindset because they haven't done their homework. And if you do your homework, there's enough resources out there. If you're working with a Marriott or a Hyatt, chances are Ron's convention has been in a city that's used a Marriott, that used a Hyatt. You should know that convention. So if they're citing your city, you know what their needs are, and you can talk toward those needs. You know what they've paid in exhibit hall rental. You know what they paid in room rate. You know what they've paid in shuttle service, coming in that city. That's your kind of basis to starting a negotiation process and what is fair, and I would agree with that, Ron.
I would, yeah.
All right, the next question is, on the opposite side, what is the one item or service that you provide as a vendor that meeting planners never seem to utilize to its full potential?
Free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, please, anybody.
Frank, what you got?
Probably the technology that GES offers with our online kits and things like that. People, they still want to talk to somebody. A lot of people do. They have questions, and they'll get on our live chat and speak with them or whatever. But they probably don't utilize the technology that we have available.
We are a destination marketing organization, so our responsibility is really to help drive attendance to the destination, and that's what we do best. And one of the things that drives me crazy is if you go to some of these, no offense, Ron, but some of the medical convention websites, it's all about the meeting. And if you want to know anything about the destination, you go all the way down here and, about Atlanta or about whatever city they're going to. And when people travel, just psychologically, they want to plan their time in the destination in addition to going to the meeting. So we work very closely with the marketing people and the public relations people at the organizations to work together in marketing and sending out our message together to really try to help them drive the attendance. So what a lot of our planners don't take advantage of is the resources that we have available at the Convention and Visitors Bureau to help them drive the attendance to the destination.
As I said earlier, for medical groups, he just stabbed me in the heart with a knife. The challenge that medical groups have is that we, in a sense, are prevented from promoting the fun stuff in this city. We have a link to a microsite, but literally, about 55% of my attendance, my professional attendance, is international. We cannot sell the city other than say, here's a link to a bureau, because the people who are making the decisions to fund the physicians to come over from Europe, they want to see education only, and that really just hit. It really started in January, but it already started unofficially last year. Like I said, we can't call things come and join our opening party, can't even use that term anymore. So we're really prevented from selling. One of the groups said we will never go to Las Vegas because of the perception, whether that it's unfortunate for certain cities, but that is really a challenge for us now, that we can't market the fun stuff. They won't fund physicians coming over.
And you're referencing the Sunshine Laws?
Well, it's the Sunshine Act, but in particular, it's the Euromed. In Europe now, they have an informal agreement that they're going to start reporting physicians' income from physicians, whether it's through grants or travel or cups of coffee. And compliance departments are making a decision now. We are only funding true science. There can't be free times for fun stuff. And obviously people are going out to dinner, but it has really become, we're all kind of struggling with it this year because I think it's really going to hit next year. But we're already seeing some results from overseas that say we're not going to bring as many people over. That's going to have a huge impact on our meeting and most medical shows. So I understand that, but medical groups that you reference are really, they have their hands tied.
So what I'm hearing is for professional events, it's probably not destination dependent, right. But for shows, like a Dragon Con or, more public style events, it's probably very important, right? You can probably touch on that because I remember the sales process at the beginning was always about destination appeal, and at some point it flipped. Well, we want everybody on the show floor. We want everybody at the venue. We don't want them going out having fun. Don't post a Brave schedule. Don't post a Hawk schedule type stuff.
Yeah, and that it's not conflicting, and that's a good point. You don't want to sell what they can't use, and so if for medical or even a convention, like Hinman Dental that's going on or coming up pretty soon, we don't want to conflict with their show hours by giving the attendees any information that might take them off the show floor. So that we take a look at the schedule, and the only things that we really promote are the things that they truly have free time to experience.
I can say as a planner, our two clients, they really want one client is very destination oriented. The other is a pretty good mix. They don't want you to have events during show hours,
Right.
but definitely we can see the patterns of their attendance based on where the show is held, and it's held in a rotation pattern. And then the other one is really having a meeting for an excuse to play golf. So, and they're always in fabulous resorts. So I think it depends on the nature of the beast. So. All right. What is a question that you feel meeting planners should ask, but they don't seem to do it during their site visit? Anyone want to take a stab?
Cost, asking about how much does this cost? I go back to when we hosted ASAE here, and this was back in 2013. And of course, as a destination, we went all out, and you do these fabulous parties, and you create this false sense with the planners that, wow, I'd like to do this, but they don't have the budget for it. So it's really asking about how much something costs.
I think it's always good, whether you're a planner or a supplier or venues, to ask. Customers love to talk about their events, and you have to pull that information out of them. So I find most of the time we don't ask open-ended questions. We tend to ask yeses and no type answers. And I know Ron loves to talk about his meeting. If you ask the right question, you'll never have to ask another question, right? Right?
What do you want to know? I'll tell you.
Right? You'll tell them. But we're all that way, right? If you get that right trigger, what was the worst part of your meeting in whatever city, or what was the best part, you tend to get information you wouldn't ordinarily get with the old yes and no answers.
One of the things that I've always amused when I go to ASE or PCMA or one of the other big industry events, they do these big elaborate parties, and I belong to a medical meeting roundtable of about 25 meeting planners who are in the medical field, and we all have medical. We're not a corporate, so we don't. I have $1.5 million AV budget, but my food budget is limited. I'd say I'd love to be able to go to an event that says, here's what you can do on a limited budget. Because I go to these great parties, and like you said, I look at these, I say, oh my God, that's fabulous. I can never do that. So what can you do that I can afford? I'd love to see that. I'm not sure anybody would come except medical meeting planners when they have the big party versus the one with Crispits, on the side. But I'd love to be able to see, like a typical bargain breakfast for. I want to do a nice continental breakfast that's not costing $70, or a lunch that I can do for $35. Or what's the lowest I can do and still achieve that. Venues don't really do a good job of promoting that necessarily, I don't think.
Sue, in thinking again, we as suppliers, sometimes we don't realize the uniqueness of the show and how important the show is to, say, Ron. It's the only show he deals with. We deal with 30 or 40 in a year, and sometimes we lose track of, we're just out there going through the motions, and we're not thinking about how important this is to the individual.
Think about this from a planner's perspective. What are some of the elements besides technology when you're looking at a hotel to see if it's a good fit for your audience? For example, like the ambiance of the hotel, or the customer service level of the hotel, or the safety and the security in the hotel. Tell us some of the intangibles versus how many meeting rooms do you have, and how much bandwidth, and how much those kind of things. Coach us on what we should be, what are the culture of the people, the staff.
So, you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Did I give you time to think?
Yeah, because I've got so many different ways to answer that question, so I'm trying to which one I want to focus on.
So for any show that's of significant size, I would say if you go beyond 1 or 2 hotels, you have to think about your attendees, and even if you have 500 attendees, you're still going to need a variety of product, style, type, boutique, mainstream. So the bigger you get, the more variety you have to have, the more price point you need to have. And I see some of the housing folks out here could answer this question probably better than me, but I know when we're placing our blocks out there, we want as many rooms in a given property as we can get, especially close to the center. But for example, our January show uses rooms at perimeter. And we go that far out because either the price point is correct or there's a unique shortage of inventory in a particular type of hotel, right? There's plenty of full-service hotels in downtown, convention center type hotels, but we don't have necessarily the boutique type or the price point when you have a large show. So we have to go that far out, and they fill. They really do. So it's not a very good answer, but you have to have a little bit of everything so that you appeal to almost everybody. Did I take your answer?
Coming from the operations side, I try to look at the size of the elevators because, just to see if everything that we've got that
That's
needs to get
important.
upstairs will go on there.
That's critical.
Yeah, if
Well,
I-
And
did
the
I mention
loading-
we have
and-
20? No.
And the loading dock area, how many bays do they have?
Right.
How many food trucks are we going to have that day we're trying to move in,
Right.
There's just a lot going on down there.
if I were a planner, and I think you got to look at meetings and events in different ways and sizes. So if you do have a hotel size program, I think you'd want to know as a planner the capacity. Like you just said, one might be the freight elevators if you have load in, but also if you're not providing breakfast, lunch, and dinner to your attendees in a banquet setting, does the hotel have the capacity to accommodate the attendees for breakfast, lunch, and dinner during short periods of time? So I think you have to look at that type of bigger picture to understand whether or not that facility is a good fit for what you're trying to put in there.
The other thing too, I think cities need to do a better job in preparing people what to expect in downtown. And I'm going to use San Francisco as an example because that's where our meeting is this year, and I was just there 2 weeks ago. I'm using 48 hotels in downtown San Francisco. I'm using all 3 buildings of Moscone. I serve on their advisory board. If you've been to San Francisco recently, the homeless situation has truly, truly gotten out of hand. One of my staff people was spit upon by a person. And when my attendees are coming to San Francisco, and I know there has been an issue here in Atlanta, a lot of people deal with the homeless on a regular basis, particularly if you're a woman, you're used to living in the suburbs. I'm actually getting to the point where I'm uncomfortable walking in downtown San Francisco, even during the day. My heart breaks for these people, but something has to be done. Cities do a very good job of glossing over that, but that is one of the number one complaints we get when we go to cities like San Francisco, is people are uncomfortable with the homeless situation. And I think cities have to, that affects a hotel location. If you're at the Hilton in San Francisco, you are literally on the edge. I tend not to use that hotel as much when I'm doing single event meetings because it's just a little bit too close to making people uncomfortable. I know they've lost business. That's an issue that I deal with all the time in terms of where do I want to put people? Where do I feel they'll be more comfortable with? I don't want them walking out at night. I think cities don't really address that very much. But that's a major factor now in some of my decisions.
We talked earlier, I used to hold a trade show in the collectible industry in San Francisco at the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium, which was perfect size venue for us, but it's located right next to City Hall, and the amount of homeless that were there in the fact that our audience was probably 95% women made them uncomfortable going back and forth. And so those are some of the issues too, is a selection of a hotel is not just its capability, but it's I guess, distance from where you're going and those kinds of concerns about gender as well.
I'm going to say this too. The other thing that affects my decision on hotels is how accurate they are in information. I'm going to use San Francisco again because I know I'm in the mode of San Francisco. If you use the San Francisco Marriott Marquis, they have rooms on the 4th and 5th floor. There's 10 of them on each floor, and they give you these floor plans I've complained about for 20 years. They're the same floor plans. The length is 40 and the width is 26. But the actual width of the room is really 16 because it's like a T, and they count it to the entrance. Why don't you correct these? Hotels, you say, what affects a decision? Why don't you use accurate floor plans? I need to see suites. Not every specialty suite is important to me, but for my annual meeting and certain specialty programs, I need to see the presidential, governors, VP, whatever you call it. I realize it may be occupied. I understand it. But I wanted to see them. So do you have floor plans of the suites? No. Do you have photos of them? No, not really. That's inexcusable to me nowadays. The Marriott Marquis at least does a very complete suite. Every suite is diagrammed. You know, hotels just don't do a very good job sometimes, and sometimes that affects, well, if you didn't give me the information, maybe I don't want to go to your hotel. Nowadays, it's inexcusable not to have information like that.
As a planner, another pet peeve of mine is capacity charts. You walk in for your site inspection and you get a brochure that says that this room can hold 450 people, and you can look around and you can see there's not a chance that it can do that, for example. And so I wish that the hoteliers would get into real size capacities.
Did they want to sit down?
What?
Did they want to sit down?
Did they want to sit down? Yeah.
Well, you know, I've suggested this to to people who have venues. I mean, I know the PCMA does that site verification thing, which I really don't trust. But if every meeting room just did because everybody has different needs. But if you just show me your room, everybody has, I do meeting matrix floor plans once I get accurate floor plans. But if every hotel just had a diagram on their website, and I know the Congress Center, I think, does this. Here's the room set maximum theater. Here's the room set maximum banquet. Here's the room set maximum classroom. And then, most people want a small stage and 2 screens. And then chances are that I would probably use that set for some of my, but it just gives me a realistic idea. I shouldn't be having to guess, if I can see this, this will hold 1,000 people classroom, I'll take this out for the stage. I have a realistic idea. We make so much extra work for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. This wouldn't be a good time to ask for how many people in the audience are with a hotel, would it?
I was just going to ask that question. Anybody with a hotel?
But if you're a vendor, but if you're a buyer, insist that people really get on their cases to ask them to do the things that will make your job easier.
Well, as it relates to site inspection and to your earlier about the meeting rooms locked and everything, I know Leanne and I were talking earlier about this, and I'm sure many of you planners have run into this before. You go to the hotel and you want to see a room. I'm sorry, I don't have any guest rooms to show you, okay? Anybody run into that problem before? And the reality of that is that room for whatever is blocked for a guest that's due to check in. Well, we know that check-ins take place throughout the day, throughout the evening. Why couldn't you or the salesperson go to the front desk, right. Hey, you got a room held for a guest? Yes, I do. Can you take it out of inventory for about 10 minutes? I just want to show it to a customer, just so they can see a room. So that's why I'm glad no hoteliers are in the room.
The next question is another pet peeve of mine, but maybe y'all can help with it. One of our clients, the National Electrical Contractors Association, we're currently booked out through 2022. On my desk, I have the 2020 McCormick Place contract. When I've spent the time on my initial site inspection, telling you what our goals are, the ambiance, the culture, the ideas of what we want to accomplish, our goals, but by the time that event happens, 6 years from now, the staff has turned over 3 times. How can a good way to pass information on, what is a good way to pass information on? I guess that's my question.
Book another convention with that sales manager.
I know we lean, when we book something for 18 and beyond, I know we lean on the convention bureau or the national or regional person, not the hotel property person, because the property people are more than likely to change at a much more rapid pace than, let's say, the area manager or the global accounts person. So I'd recommend, that works for us anyway, is to work kind of at a higher level farther out. And that way we avoid having to repeat ourselves, and it minimizes the gap and the change.
I think it's an accountability, and if you're referring to salespeople, the responsibility of a sales manager is to own an account. Documentation is very important, whatever systems they use to capture that information about a client, about the culture, how the booking process actually took place. Because especially in the CVB world, hopefully you're going to book another convention. So one of the things when we hire a new salesperson, their first responsibility is to reach out to all of their confirmed accounts. Not just focusing on maybe what's tentative or prospecting or whatever, but it's the confirmed accounts, because truly, that's the low-hanging fruit. They've already booked a convention either in your hotel or your destination. What's to stop them from booking another year with you? So you want to develop that relationship pretty quickly, so you feel comfortable as a planner. Despite the fact that that program is probably handed over to a convention services manager, whether it be at the bureau, the hotel, or a convention center, there's still a responsibility of the salesperson. The sales process never ends just because a contract is signed or some sort of letter of intent is signed. It's a continuation process. And so shame on any of the people that haven't reached out to their confirmed accounts.
Ron, do you have any comments about that?
No, I'm good. Trying to be nice.
Other than the size of the show, the number of rooms, space size, name some of the items that a meeting planner typically don't provide you with that would help you in better servicing their meetings and attendees.
From my standpoint, I've run across it over the years, and we ask it a lot, and we talk to the customers, but what is the largest piece of equipment that I've got to lift for the show, and what's it going to take for me to get it off the truck and get it back on the truck? Run into that an awful lot on the International Woodworking Fair. So.
Okay.
We see that a lot with the non-professional shows. Really don't even know what their show looks like. You know, they're calling you 6 months, 9 months out, and they want space held, but they really don't know their program, even though it's not a first-time event. And it's hard to teach your staff and the folks on site that you're just not going to get that information 6 months out. And you know, we're kind of spoiled here with some of our own shows, so we know what we're doing a year out.
Right.
So I think we do a good job trying to educate, and all the centers do this, do a very good job educating the newbies, the new clients or the rookies on what's necessary and needed, because it makes them look good later. But that's probably the biggest challenge we have, is customers really don't know what they need at the time that they're reserving space.
All right, that wraps up my questions. Can we open the floor? Does anyone have a question for our illustrious panel? Don't be shy.
Good, I guess we answered all your questions, huh?
Wow, I guess we accomplished our goal. Yes?
Hi, Kelsey from the Georgia Congress Center, Marcy. This is actually probably more for Ron. Is there any expectation from a show management perspective of sponsorship in the facility?
Well, we're a medical show, and we get a lot of sponsorship, as much as we can. In fact, I was telling my illustrious moderator here, like, we charge $35,000 for a product theater, and her eyes fell out. You know, we sell sponsorship for visibility to basically our pharma companies. We're certainly appreciative of things that a city can do, but it's really, for us, more of a goodwill kind of thing. In terms of sponsorship from a city, I mean, some cities have helped with the busing, you know, they've contributed something for, if we're doing, you know, like Boston, my busing was about $500,000 or so. The city kicked in some stuff through, you know, subsidies from the hotel in addition to what we sold. So I think it varies, because we sell corporate sponsorship. That is really our bread and butter. It comes directly to us. But certainly if the city or a Congress Center or a convention center wanted to do something like sponsor a breakfast or a coffee break, we're certainly appreciative. We don't really expect that, though, because we've probably already sold it, in all honesty. But I think other shows probably would really appreciate as much sponsorship as possible from a city or a venue or a hotel.
I think the biggest challenge in general is, you know, do venues actually allow, and where do they allow signage or advertising to go, and the conflicts with any sponsors they have internally. In our particular case, you know, when you came in, you saw sponsorship. You saw stuff stuck everywhere, on the floor and the ceiling. But not every venue allows that, and sometimes it's in conflict with the show that's coming here, and they've got to walk by all this other stuff. But I think that's really specific to each venue, and I think most of the venues would encourage a customer making money on signage. But
We even got, some of you may have already encountered this. I've only encountered this for the first time in Boston last year. I think Atlanta does it, but I've never paid for it. And all of a sudden, centers now are expecting a certain percentage of our sponsorship income for signs that are in public areas. I've found that this is now more and more something that is happening. I never encountered it until last year. It's sort of self-reporting, and I talk to a lot of people, and that becomes something that I'm really trying to fight. Certain cities want 10%, and I'm just going, really? I'm not giving you 10% of my money. So that's become one of those things that is affecting my bottom line. So.
This venue tries to allow the exhibit service contractor to not only police that, but to take that business. So. Yeah. We as a venue try to get out of that business, and that's not, I know other venues are very active in that, but we chose personally not to get involved in that piece and let the service contractor drive that.
Yeah.
Particularly in the public areas, when you do have a not-for-profit association client, in our case, and the center does want a piece of that, that's a chunk from a budget that has been really finely honed in the first place as a nonprofit association. So. More questions?
What a quiet and tasteful group.
If not, thank you so much to our panel of experts. And I want to say thank you to Bob Schuler and to Mark Lynn for this amazing setting. The flowers are amazing. And Crystal, with CCR, we have stepped up a big notch. It's amazing. So thanks so much, really.